Let's read the prompt for this paired passage. Both authors would most likely agree on which statement. So these are usually minor ideas on passages that disagree, but let's take a look in this case. Text 1. Some animal species, like the leopard, can be found in many kinds of areas. On the other hand, tropical mountain bird species tend to be limited in the types of spaces they can call home. So leopards are in many places. Others, like mountain birds, are limited. This is because many mountain bird species are only able to survive at very specific elevations. Over time, these species have likely become used to living at a specific temperature. Therefore, these species struggle to survive at elevations that are warmer or colder than they are used to. Okay, so some roam, but we focus on this one that's restricted to this one area. Okay, let's see what text 2 says. A new study reviewed observations of 3,000 bird species to understand why tropical mountain bird species, the same mountain bird species mentioned up in text 1, live at specific elevations. They noted that when a mountain bird species was found in an area with many other bird species, it tended to inhabit much smaller geographic areas. So it had to share, basically. It is thus likely that competition for resources with other species, not temperature, limits where these birds can live. Okay, so the main ideas are kind of contrasting. Text 1 says they grew up or have evolved to live in this one temperature and climate, therefore they can't vary temperature. Text 2 says, oh no, it's not the temperature at all. It's competition among other birds for resources. So what would these agree on? Well, they both agree, because that's our question prompt, remember. They agree on the fact that the species inhabit very localized areas, very specific elevations, right? So let's see what answer choice pulls up that idea. Tropical mountain bird species are restricted in where they can live. Are they restricted? That seems to be, they only live in a certain place, but are they restricted to live in only a certain space? I guess that might be true. Text 1 would say they're restricted by temperature. Text 2 would say they're restricted by competition. Maybe. That seems to be almost like the action's happening too much to them, a little extreme to me. I'm not sure I like that yet. Let's keep reading. Scientists have better tools to observe tropical mountain spirit than they did that. No, this is nothing about how scientists measure today versus yesterday. C. Little is known about how tropical mountain bird species, who cares about how they build their nests? That is completely irrelevant. D. Tropical mountain bird species that live at high elevations tend to be genetically similar. I mean, that might be true. I mean, if they don't go anywhere, they inbreed, they're probably very similar. But again, that's not the idea here, and it's not what they would necessarily agree on. So A, as questionable as it sounds, it is technically correct. They are restricted in where they can live. It's just different reasons that restrict them. Notice it's interesting because they often put in this abstract or abstraction from the actual text. The text says they are limited by temperature to live where they live, and text 2 says they're limited by competition, and A just says they're restricted. It doesn't say the details. We've seen this many cases on these problems where they have an abstraction of the answer. You're looking for something specific. You don't find quite that idea, but you find a generalization or abstraction of that specific idea. So keep that in mind. Let's read the prompt for this paired passage. Both authors would most likely agree with which statement. So another most likely agrees. Again, probably they're going to be opposing ideas somehow, and there'll be some minor point they agree on, something similar between the two passages. So let's see if it's again that case. Text 1. American sculptor Edmonia Lewis is best known for her sculptures that represent figures from history and mythology, such as the death of Cleopatra and Hagar. Although Lewis sculpted other subjects, her career as a sculptor is best represented by the works in which she depicted these historical and mythical themes. So she depicts history and mythology. That's her thing. So what does text 2 say? Art historians have typically ignored the many portrait busts Edmonia Lewis created. So they're ignoring something, and my guess it's going to be something other than just history and mythology. Lewis likely carved these busts, sculptures of a person's head, frequently throughout her long career. She's known for her sculptures that represent historical figures. Okay, we said that in text 1. That's a similarity. But Lewis likely supported herself financially by carving portrait busts for acquaintances who paid her to represent their features. So she did basically kind of portraits. Thus, Lewis' portrait busts are a central aspect of her career as a sculptor. So they do have some disagreement or different takes on her career. One says a big part of her career is as a sculptor doing portraits, and the other one says she does historical and mythological figures. So, okay, but what do they agree on, or what would they agree on here? She is known for her sculptures, right? Or a central part, she is known for her sculptures, literally says it in both texts. So I think that's probably what they would both agree on. Lewis's portrait busts have overshadowed her other work. No, they wouldn't both agree on that, right? Text 1 doesn't even mention her other work. The Death of Cleopatra is Lewis's most famous piece. Okay, that's very extreme language. And it's not supported and not something they agree on, so that is definitely the wrong answer. Sculpting representations of historical figures was a short-lived trend. Of historical figures? No, this one says it was a big part of her career and what she's known for. So does it say anywhere here that it's a short-lived trend? No, it doesn't. That's not right. Lewis's works are varied in the subjects they depict. Yes, they would. Even text 1 would say it's history and mythology, and text 2 would say it's friends and historical figures. So they both indicate she had multiple subjects, which is literally what D says. D is the correct answer. Let's read the prompt for the paired passage here. We want a difference, kind of like the authors agree, but the opposite, a difference in how text 1 and text 2 view Strasberg's team's study. So we care about how they view this study, whatever it is. Let's read. A team led by Strasberg has found that rewilding farmland, returning land to its natural state, could help preserve biodiversity and offset carbon emissions. The amount of farmland that would need to be restored, they found, is remarkably low. So you can return the farmland back to nature and you wouldn't have to do too much of it. That's the idea here. Rewilding a mere 15% of the world's current farmland could prevent 60% of expected species extinctions and help absorb nearly 299 gigatons of carbon dioxide. A clear win in the fight against the biodiversity and climate crisis. Okay, what does text 2 say? Something else about their study? Certainly something different, so we need to figure that out. Wow, okay, there we go, our contrasting transition right at the gate. While Strasberg's team's findings certainly offer encouraging insight into the potential benefits of rewilding, yep, that is text 1's basic idea, it's important to consider potential effects on global food supplies. Okay, so they're saying there's something else that you have to be careful about here and consider. The researchers suggest that to compensate for the loss of food-producing land, remaining farmland would need to produce even more food. Thus, policies focused on rewilding farmland must also address strategies for higher yield farming. Okay, so I thought we produced like food for 10 billion people, even though there are 7 billion people in the world. So don't we produce more food than we actually need? And of course, yeah, there's still starving people. But anyway, that's getting off the text. So they have a different take on this. Text 2 basically takes a different viewpoint because they're considering something that they think text 1 should be considering about rewilding. So let's see which answer choice picks that idea up. The author of text 2 approaches the study's findings with some caution, absolutely, whereas the author of text 1 is optimistic about the reported potential environmental benefits. Yes, a clear win, that's optimistic, right? while that is with some caution, right? So this looks pretty good. I'm going to hold on to that and check B, C, and D. The author of text 2 claims that the percentage of farmland identified by Strasburg's team is too low. No, nobody mentioned anything about the number 15% being wrong or anything like that. That's just not in the text. C, the author of text 2 believes that the results described by Strasburg's team are achievable in the near future. I'm not sure they said near future, right? I don't think they put any timeline on it per se in text 2. So that's not right there. Whereas the other text 1 argues that they likely aren't. No, it's not a question of time, near or far. That wasn't the issue. The author of text 2 focuses on real wilding's effect on carbon emissions, whereas the author of text 1 focuses on its effect on biodiversity. No, the author of text 2 is focusing on the food supply. The author of text 1 focuses on biodiversity and emissions. This is wrong. It's mixing up the facts. A is the best answer. The author of text 2 approaches the studies with caution because you got to worry about what food we produce and losing that. And text 1 doesn't even mention that potential negative. He's just optimistic.